Hi there, wig and topper lover. This is Heather from HairKittyKitty.com, the wig lover formerly known as CysterWigs with a C. And I wanted to make this video because you may be wondering why I haven't been posting for a while, why it seems like I may have disappeared off the face of the earth. And long story short, my dad died and I've been going through it. So I wanted to give you a little bit of background on that. I will try to get through this video without having to edit much. So if you see my cats running around like behind me or anything like that, please just know I'm not really intending to zhuzh this up, make it look fancy. I didn't even put makeup on or hair because I'm going to go out in the garden and try to cover my plants before the frost hits tonight. But yeah, I wanted to tell you a little bit about what I've been going through over the last few months. And the fact is, I've been recording content, but the hardest part so far has just been finding the mental bandwidth to edit it. So I don't know if you yourself are a content creator, but if you've ever been a content creator of any appreciable volume, then you know that making the content is not a cut and dry sort of thing. Like, you basically have to get an idea, almost like script it out, figure out what it is that you plan to cover and how, and then you need to shoot it, and then you need to edit it, and then you need to put it online, and then you need to promote it. And the gist of all of that is that you're spending a lot of time by yourself, staring at a camera and talking, or staring at a camera and editing stuff, or, you know, whatever. And so, you know what I mean? Like, it's a lot of alone time. And I just don't have the ability to do that right now. Not on an ongoing basis, because I am pretty depressed because my dad died. I mean, I've got these adorable little fur demons that keep me occupied, and they are obsessed with me. This one, Claudia in particular, like she never leaves me alone, which is quite nice. I mean, she's either on my lap or, you know, trying to bite one of my toes or something like that, and it's a nice distraction, but it's still not enough for me to feel comfortable just staring at a computer for really long periods of time without another person interacting with me. And so that's basically where I've been at with this so far. So here's how this happened. I've been going through this for about a year. In June of last year, my dad contacted me and via text message, because he was very much a minimalist when it came to communication, and he contacted me and essentially said that he had a procedure and everything was fine, not to worry. But immediately I started to worry because my dad never really told me about anything that was going on with his health unless it was really catastrophically bad, and then in that case he would still try to minimize it. So I knew that the fact that he was mentioning this procedure at all without, you know, he didn't give any details or tell us what it was for, that I knew something was really wrong. And I also knew my dad's medical history. So you may recall that a few years back, he had a quadruple bypass and a heart valve replacement at the Cleveland Clinic. And at that time, the doctor told him that he had liver disease as well, that he had cirrhosis of the liver. And the doctor straight up told him, you need to stop drinking or else you're going to end up with liver cancer. A couple years later, he ended up with liver cancer. And I didn't really hear much about that because apparently they were able to excise the tumor and he was cured, or so he said. But of course, fast forward to June of last year when he said that he had a procedure, I immediately knew that it was probably related to this liver cancer coming back. And I couldn't get a straight answer from him. So it took 2 months of remote nagging for him to finally tell me what the hell was going on. And I mean, and it was pretty shocking because initially he told me, and I still have all these text messages. Initially he told me, oh, I don't remember what kind of cancer it was, when he finally admitted it was cancer. And then he was like, I'm going to have to ask the doctor because I must have thrown away the piece of paper. I mean, that just blows my mind. Like, men, I think, are just built different. They're just built different, because it would never cross my mind in a million years to not take the name of that and like just emblazon it in my brain cells so that way I could research it to the nth degree to figure out what I'm in for. And he would rather not know. He would rather not know to the extent that he couldn't even remember what the name of the cancer was when it was really basic liver cell carcinoma, right? But I mean, this is still very telling because it shows I mean, one of the things you'll learn about liver cancer, right, especially if you have had a loved one that's gone through it, is that, you know, there are a few different varieties, but predominantly they're split into two categories. One is primary and one secondary, right? Like if the liver cancer is your primary cancer, you're in for a very, very rough ride, because liver cells are, you know, autogenerative. They regenerate. And so like these are hard cancers to kick, and they have a lot of symptoms attached to them. And in fact, you know, the other group is secondary, right? Like a good example of that is a lot of people with like pancreatic cancer, right? Pancreatic cancer is very much known to be fatal. It is very much known to be it's really rare if somebody can actually kick it. And if you have pancreatic cancer, chances are you don't become symptomatic until it starts to metastasize to your liver, because your liver is such an important organ when you're digesting food. It releases bile. It helps with hormonal regulation because it has a direct influence over your pancreas. I mean, it's just, there's a lot that your liver is actually Grand Central Station for. And when it starts to get sick, it has a massive effect all throughout your body, and you'll be tired and you'll feel like hell and you won't want to eat and your skin will turn yellow. Just a lot of things will go wrong. And so it shocked me that my dad didn't want to know more about it. That he didn't know what kind of ride he was in for, or the fact that, you know, if you have a recurring cancer, it's much harder to kick, right, than it was the first time around. And, you know, I'm very fortunate in a weird way because of my experiences here at CysterWigs, because I engage a lot with nurses, people who are medical professionals, and frankly, a lot of folks who are dealing with these disorders because they're going through chemotherapy and they're buying wigs from me. And you hear their stories, you fall in love with these people, and then they disappear. And you'll find out from their loved ones that, you know, they want to donate the wigs to somewhere, that sort of thing. And it's a heartbreaking aspect of being in this industry. Understatement. But what it does do, silver lining, is that it prepares you to know that there are a lot of layers. There are just a lot of levels to cancer. And that, you know, everyone's cancer is a little bit different. They're as unique as the individuals themselves. And of course, my neighbor is going to mow his lawn right now, but I'm still going to try not to edit this. So my apologies if you can hear him mowing his lawn. Okay, so anyway, I didn't find out definitively what my dad actually had until August of last year. And in the meantime, like, I already had like a sixth sense. My intuition had kicked in and I already knew what this was. I was just kind of waiting for that confirmation. But I mean, I had already started shopping for houses in Ohio. I already had that conversation with my husband, who, to his great credit, was fully supportive of basically uprooting both of our lives and the business, which was no small feat. Like, doing that is a huge undertaking, right? It is a massive undertaking to move all of that stuff and like an entire warehouse and you know, all that equipment, multiple states. It took, you know, we did finally move. We found a house. I signed for the house in September of 2023. We had moved into it by October. I even made a video letting you know that we were moving and that things would be disrupted. I may have hinted at the fact that it was due to my dad's cancer coming back. But I didn't go into a lot of detail. And, but I mean, it took 4 U-Hauls and a pod to move everything up here. Because, I mean, while I can downsize my personal belongings pretty easily, it's a lot harder to downsize the equipment that belongs to a business, because you kind of have to depreciate that and reconcile that on your books and stuff. And it was just much easier simply to pay to pack it and to move it. And so that's ultimately what we ended up doing. And the punchline is that my dad was gone before we even finished unpacking. Like, we are still going through that process. My house is still a mess. It's full of boxes still. I mean, it happened that fast. So, that's basically why I've been away. That's also why I moved to Ohio again. I'm originally from that area. I lived in Georgia. I kind of miss Georgia, honestly. It's very happening in Georgia. I mean, you can't refute that. The weather is generally very nice. You know, the winters are mild. And if you're keeping score, I moved to Ohio in the winter, essentially, like right at the end of fall, at the beginning of winter. So not the best time to move to the Great Lakes and to deal with all that lake effect snow, but I'm still glad that I did it. But it's just been a lot. It's been a lot. And on top of that, you know, my work, I may have mentioned this, but I work as a research analyst for the software industry, and my specialty is digital commerce software. And I'm pretty well regarded at this stage in the game because I've got practitioner level experience from all these years working at HairKittyKitty. I'm extremely familiar with the top to bottom processes that go into both the front and back end of standing up a store online, and the fulfillment and all of those things. And so because of that experience, I'm very valuable because most research analysts do not have firsthand exposure to that many levels of the processes and systems integration that go into building up a website. And long story short there is that I have been basically working myself to death in my day job. And that's not sustainable. I mean, you don't have to tell me that. I know it because I'm so tired. I didn't even want to put hair on today. Like I'm just exhausted most of the time. You know, maybe I'll make videos about this too, but I mean, within the past 2 weeks, so this is just in the last 2 weeks, I have been a paid speaker at VTEX Day in Brazil, which is the largest technology event in Latin America. It's in Sao Paulo, Brazil. It's an annual event. There were 25,000 people in attendance, and I was the day 2 closer. For the record, I was the day 1 closer. The day 2 closer was actually Malala. And I actually got to meet Malala, which was pretty cool. But I mean, I got flown down there and paid to speak about AI and digital commerce because, I mean, again, I went to grad school for AI. So if you've been following me for a while, you knew that already. But I mean, that's really relevant right now. Went to Miami immediately after that and spoke at the very first Commerce Tools Elevate in Miami. And then I have to go to Dallas this upcoming week to be a part of Conga Connect. Following that, I'm going to Orlando to be a part of Pros Outperform, and I'm a paid speaker there. And I've also done a paid webinar for Salesforce for their Commerce Cloud, the B2B Commerce Cloud, all in a very short period of time. And that's not even all the travel. That's not even all the invitations I've gotten. Like Shopware wanted to fly me out to Hamburg, Germany to speak at their developer event. And I thought that would have been very cool. But at the same time, like, I am maxed out. I am at capacity, right? I'm working on a lot of research. I'm doing all of these paid speaking gigs, and it's a good thing that I'm a good public speaker. I'm actually a lot better on stage than I am here on camera. I mean, I know that probably sounds very braggadocious, but it's true. I'm just really comfortable on stage, always have been. You know, theater habits die hard. But I mean, bringing this full circle, like, even that's kind of painful to think about because, I mean, I'm spending a lot of time on a plane by myself. You know, the plane ride to Sao Paulo is 15 hours. 15 hours. And that's not including time in the airport. That's a long time to sit there with your thoughts. It's a long time to think about life and loved ones and what it feels like to lose them. And one of the things that I have consistently been struggling with is that for any of you who have been following me for a while, particularly any of my patrons, you know, because I've made videos on Patreon specifically about this, that, you know, my dad was an addict, and it wasn't just alcohol. You know, for periods of that life, he was on some pretty hard things, including crack. And, you know, I was there for all of it as a kid. And so part of the reason why my dad and I were not as close as I wish we could have been, and I want to be really transparent about this because, You know, it's not that I necessarily need free therapy from you. Don't think that that's this. I've gone to actual therapy, and I do have a fair amount of clarity and comfort in talking about this. But I want to make sure that I put out a trigger warning. So trigger warning, please accept that here. I'm going to talk about that aspect of my childhood, just a smidge. I'm just going to tap on it. Nothing really gruesome. But essentially, you know, my dad, he may have given up the hard substances later in his life, but he never gave up the alcohol. And I didn't really like being around my dad when he was drunk. I mean, it's not that he was a mean drunk. Quite the opposite. He was the life of the party. But, you know, I'm not really a partier. Like once in a while, right? Like once in a while I might have some drinks. I'm not a prude, right? But at the same time, my life doesn't revolve around substances. I don't consider myself really addicted to anything. I have medications I take every day, but they're not psychotropic, right? Like I'm talking about my spironolactone, which I was off of for a few days, and hence why I've got these breakouts, because I've been so busy that I forgot to get the prescription refilled. But you know, things that aren't fun to take. So I don't really consider myself an addict as much as I am medicating myself for a hormonal condition, that sort of thing. But my dad, you know, he self-medicated, I guess, with alcohol and substances, and I didn't really like being around him like that, just because he would get a little loose-lipped and tell me really sordid details about what things were like for him during those hard drug periods, and I would rather not know. I would rather not know, because that's some very dark stuff, and the things he has told me were bad enough that I don't really want to know more. And so because of that, you know, I don't necessarily have a lot of regrets about not being there more often, because I know precisely why I applied for a school in Georgia. I know exactly why I moved away from my family, and it was because of that dynamic, which is so much more toxic than what I'm actually telling you here in this video, but I feel like I don't really need to go into much detail. I'm pretty sure you can probably guess, right? And the problem is that, you know, for my safety, and not just psychological safety, like safety, period, I needed to put some distance between myself and some of the other members of my family, because it was clear that they did not honor my boundaries or even understand them. And they could not make sense of the fact that, you know, why I wouldn't want to hang out with them in bars all the time. Like why I wouldn't be comfortable always having to meet them when there's alcohol in the room. Like, why can't we just go out to eat? Why can't we just go to a movie? Why can't we just hang without it being about, you know, getting drunk and then, you know, telling stories about ye old good times, because they weren't universally good to all of us, right? Like, it's way different to be the sober person in the room with a bunch of alcoholics. That's not as much fun as the alcoholics tend to think it is, you know what I mean? And that's the dynamic. And I, again, don't want to make it sound like I'm above drinking, right? Like, I don't look down on people who even have these kind of substance problems, because I view it as a disease. And I definitely have a construct in my head where I view that there's a definite distinction between the disease and the person. I could love the person very much and hate the disease, and hate the person when they're actively in the throes of the disease and still know that it's not really them. Like, the core of that person, like my dad fundamentally was a wonderful human being, but he's done terrible things because of the disease. Like, you can't turn your back on an addict. You can't trust an addict. And the one thing that you can trust an addict to do is to not tell you the truth. And that goes really deep, because they won't even tell themselves the truth. And that's how my dad died. He died without knowing. I mean, I think he knew, like on a visceral, in his soul kind of level. I think he knew he was dying. But because he couldn't admit it to himself or anyone around him, I think he suffered a lot more at the end than he needed to. Personally, I think that had he gone into palliative care or hospice even, he would have had a much more comfortable time exiting this mortal coil. And that's why I wanted to talk about this too, because even though it was hard to go through, and I deal with a lot of conflicting emotions about it, because I mean, death is rough, but when you lose somebody that you've got kind of a, complicated history with, that you still love very much, it just adds to that. It makes it really hard. I'm not going to say harder, right? Because I don't want to compare grief like that. It's hard, period, right? But I mean, I would say it adds complexity for sure. And I want you to know, and I've told my husband this and I mean it, I don't feel guilt, because even with that complex history, even though I know that if the tables were turned and I was the one that was dying, that he would not have done what I did. I know that. I couldn't even get him to go to my singing recitals, right? Like, but I know that it doesn't matter. It fundamentally doesn't matter. Like, for me, the right move, even though no one asked me to. And I have to be careful how I discuss this among my family members, because I don't want them to feel like they're beholden to me or that I expect things from them because I made this choice. But I chose to uproot my life, not because I wanted to, but because I wanted to be here for the end. And I knew I couldn't do that being 680 miles away. And because I couldn't trust him to tell me when the end was coming. I knew that I had to get up here in Ohio. So I don't feel guilt, because I trusted my instincts. I put that in motion. And I did sacrifice for love. And I can rest calmly. I can sleep well at night knowing that I did what I could. But it's rough, because I'm sorry. The complexity that comes from being the child of an addict is that you always wish, like, there's like this version of the relationship you wish you had. And when that person dies, it becomes really obvious in a way that's easy to overlook before they die. I think it's just the finite nature of death, the absolute nature of death, that makes you realize that that version of the relationship you want is never, ever going to happen. Like, it's over. The window is gone. And the truth is that that window was probably never there. It probably never would have happened. Because for it to happen, it requires both parties to be actively engaged in trying to repair that bond. And my dad was just never that guy. Like, he never wanted to really get to know me on my level. And he never really wanted to be that engaged with my life, because he didn't understand it. And I don't want to go into a lot more detail than that, but again, I'm just kind of tiptoeing around it. If we ever meet in person and you're ever curious to know more, I'd be happy to tell you, because these things are much easier to talk about with another person in the room. And actually, I'm kind of happy to see my cat's little wiggle butt behind me and the happy tail, because at least that tells me, that I'm not alone in the room. But it is rough, right? And I wanted to explain that, and that this is why I haven't been posting. I'm still kind of processing these emotions. And it's hard for me to sit down and make a coherent video without crying. And then having to sit and edit it is something I don't know if I could actually do again without crying. And, whenever I make videos where I show any level of human emotion other than pure joy and enthusiasm, unfortunately, women who don't like me will go out of their way to basically say I'm unhinged or that I'm a basket case or, you know, insert some kind of ad hominem attack here. And that's just the nature of the internet. And I didn't know if I was in a good headspace where I'd be able to deal with that element of things either. But, you know, I think I've reached the stage where I don't really care so much about that part of things. I just want to acknowledge that I know that that's probably going to happen if I post this, particularly since I did cry. I mean, I can't make this kind of content. I have tried to talk about this for weeks because it is currently mid-April. It is April 20th today, and my dad died the last week of March. But still, like, I've reached the point where, you know, that unseen other element isn't really bothering me as much. It's just the fact is I've been struggling to sit down and actually articulate what I'm going through right now. And I'm doing this precisely because some of the traveling I've been doing, some of the little things I've been doing, like I bought a wig. And, you know, I talked about that in the group chat for our Facebook group, Hanging Out Talking Hair, formerly Moon Kitty Mix-Up. And some of the folks in there, notably Kristen, Dion, and Sheila, shout out to you guys, were asking, you know, where I'm at these days and, you know, basically why I haven't been posting. You guys have been such wonderful supporters of what I'm doing with the wig business and a real light in this situation for me that I feel like I need to give you an update about what's going on. Not to necessarily justify it, because I feel like it's pretty justified all on its own. Like when a parent dies, that's a big deal, period, right? I feel like that's a universal we can all kind of agree upon. You know, regardless of how you feel about it, that parent, it's still a heavy thing to go through. But I wanted you to know that I've been trying to make content, and I've actually recorded quite a lot of it. It's just... Exactly, Claudia! I don't know if you could hear her. Oh, she's being very, very tall right now. Claudia, you think I'm talking to you? Is that what this is? Meow? No. Well, hi. Hello. Are you trying to tell me it's lap time? Is that it? See, this little one, she's going through her chompy stage, and my hands bear witness to that. But she and also the fact that my cats aren't declawed, you can tell that too, right? But yeah, she's been my little companion through all this. She's just super snuggly. So anyway, I'm rambling. I love you guys. Please know that I'm thinking of you. I may try to edit some of the content that I've been generating during the last several months as time permits, maybe over the summer. But for right now, it's still rough to edit stuff. It's still rough to make stuff without turning into a rambling, crying mess. So I'm going to end this. Thank you for your time, and I hope that you have a wonderful spring, and we'll be in touch again soon. Bye-bye.